It's spooky season, so I'm doing 24 hours of horror. I have 3 books that I want to read over the course of this video. So the idea is reading for 24 hours with some asterisks. The 24 hours will go all day today, but then it'll pause tonight, and then I'm gonna sleep, and then in the morning I'll pick it back up and finish the 24 hours because I don't want to hate my day tomorrow. Plus, I don't think I would be able to focus on reading if I were dead tired. Like, I don't think I would actually be able to retain the words anymore in the middle of the night. So 24 hours of reading horror with concessions because I'm mortal. I've actually already started the first book. I got excited and couldn't hold off long enough to do the intro, and I'm already 84 pages in, and I'm already obsessed with it. So the concept is this traveling circus, this circus that comes into town in Illinois, in Greenville, is it called? Greentown. In Greentown, Illinois, it comes in the middle of the night, and then it's just there. But it's not your average circus. So this follows 2 young boys, 14 I think they are. They're best friends, next door neighbors, and they are a couple of hours apart in time. One was born right before midnight on the 30th of October. One was born a couple minutes before midnight. So they're like a couple minutes apart in age, and they're best friends and they do everything together. So I love the way this book describes these 2 at the very beginning. So there they go, Jim running slower to stay with Will, Will running faster to stay with Jim, Jim breaking 2 windows in a haunted house because Will's along, Will breaking 1 window instead of none because Jim's watching. How we get our fingers in each other's clay, that's friendship, each playing the potter to see the shapes we can make with the other. I love the prose of this book. This is my first Ray Bradbury book, and I'm completely in love. He can create a scene, paint this vivid picture so in a really emotional way, like a simple setting. Here, I'll read you something more. So something as simple as a kid walking into his home where his parents are chillin'. Framed through the hall door, Will saw the only theater he cared for now, the familiar stage where his father sat, holding a book, but reading the empty spaces. In a chair by the fire, Mother knitted and hummed like a tea kettle. He wanted to be near and not near them. He saw them close, he saw them far. Suddenly, they were awfully small in too large a room, in too big a town, and much too huge of a world. In this unlocked space, they seemed at the mercy of anything that might break in from the night. Including me, Will thought. Including me. Suddenly, he loved them more for their smallness than he ever had when they seemed tall. Stop! That's just a kid walking into his home, reflecting on his parents and reflecting on himself ultimately as well. And little this is the very next page, just little descriptors like, immediately Mom opened a smile that was like lighting a second fire. I love his prose. Sometimes, every now and then I get lost in his prose. Every now and then I get kind of tangled in the prose because they become so prose is singular, because the prose becomes so elaborate that I get tangled up in it a little bit and I have to read it again, but that rarely happens. Almost always it can take a simple scene like walking into the room and make it so emotionally charged. Just the same, the scenes of horror, the way Bradbury writes, the way he depicts things, he does it in a way that's very evocative, that's very emotional, that's very, that kind of gets underneath your skin, but also he breaks all the grammatical rules. Like he'll write in fragmented sentences, or he won't capitalize sentences where he should, or he'll make a really long run-on with way too many commas, or he'll write in a way that's deliberately wrong in order to add to the unease and discomfort of what's happening. Somehow his prose just elevates the way this is happening, and it's not horror, like in your face screaming at you kind of horror. It's like this disturbing, feeding on your inner man kind of horror. I love it. I'm so into this book so far. So I'm gonna make a cup of coffee and I'm gonna read some more. Which leads me to today's sponsor, Atlas Coffee Club. Atlas Coffee Club is a coffee subscription service that curates the top 1% of the world's best coffee, roasted and ground to your preference and delivered freshly to your door. They source from over 50 countries, so you get to taste a different country every month. And each month, subscribers receive a single origin 100% Arabica coffee from a new country. They also get a postcard from the country and an info card detailing the country's history, tasting notes of the beans, and context about what makes this coffee unique. You can pause, skip, or cancel your subscription at any time, and their focus is on sustainability impacts for their products and local farming practices, and they pay above fair trade prices for all of their coffee. We go through a lot of coffee in our house, and so we'll buy our grocery coffee, and then once a month we get like our specialty coffee, our novelty coffee in the mail through Atlas. So it's like you go through your normal brews, but then once a month you get your treat in the mail. So you can get 50% off of your first bag of coffee with the discount code Murphy, or you can go to atlascoffeeclub.com/Murphy for your 50% off, or just follow the link in the description of this video. Thank you, Atlas, for sponsoring this video, and back to the book. Something wicked this way comes. This book has taken me all day to read. Obviously, look at how it's getting dark. Actually, I think the exposure is doing a pretty good job at not quite showing how quickly it's getting dark, but oh my goodness. So this book took me all day, as it should. The prose demands to be taken slowly, and I think that's intentional. This is my first Bradbury book, so I don't know how he typically writes his book, but this is meant to be a slow, deep into your bones, uncomfortable horror. It has scenes that are really evocative. It has scenes that are very like, oh my gosh, this woman with her eyes sewn shut and her hands that can read your like there's some really intense scenes, but for the most part, it's so much more of a story about people and about families and about the bonds that we create. It's about our inner fears, the inner turmoils that we have, be it this desire to grow older, this fear of growing older, this fear of being left behind, depending on which character you're looking at right now. It's about the tug and pull within us between good and evil, and our ability to overcome it, and our ability to stand together to overcome our own things that cause us to create divides between those we love, and to stand together and survive what we need to for one another. It's such a beautiful story. It's so evocative and disturbing at times, but also surprisingly hopeful. I think if you like It by Stephen King, this book is all the things that I loved about it without many of the things that I didn't love about it. It's this coming of age, this story of a bond between two boys that have grown up together and lived life together and have to overcome evils that come into their small hometown together. It's a saga about family and of wicked things coming and them bonding together, growing up, finding the thing that causes them to mature to the point that they can overcome it. There's something about being able to depict that kind of bond that you have when you're a kid, that kind of bond between your closest friends or between you and a parent, the complicated relationship, but also the live and die for each other, and that one another, and that willingness, that fear of loss, that desire to be able to be there for them and do anything for them, and that belief that you can overcome any kind of evil if it comes your way. And it's rare to be able to nail that childhood bond the way this book does. It's all the hopes and fears of adolescence as well as of parenthood. Oh my goodness. But then it's also that creepy horror. This book wrote humans and their relationships so well. But also the creepy, spooky, messed up scenes also were so good. Bradbury, he wrote in prose that typically I think oftentimes I maybe would kind of back away from a little bit, just because they are, or it is a lot. But for this book, I feel like it complemented the story so perfectly. It complemented the complex human relationships that we explored, as well as the chaos and unwieldiness of the opposition we were facing so well. I really want to read more Bradbury. So this is my first Bradbury. So if you're a Bradbury fan, please do recommend me more of his books. What next should I read? I mean, I know he wrote Fahrenheit 451, but I'd really love to read another horror book by him, because this book just kind of hit me perfectly. It was kind of the perfect horror for me. I mean, Pet Sematary I think is still my #1 best horror, but this might be right next to it, or at least like right behind it. It's really close. It was kind of perfect. So please recommend more Bradbury to me. What's my next Bradbury? Because I think I'm gonna read another one really soon. I'm gonna go ahead and start Night of the Mannequins tonight as well. I might even finish it tonight, but what a start to the vlog. I'm on chapter 8. I've read 73 pages of Night of the Mannequins. I know, it's it's just a little novella, so it's really not very impressive, but I'm getting quite tired, so I don't know how much later I'm gonna stay up. I'm not gonna tell you what time it is because I don't want you to judge me for being tired this early. But this book is incredible. I love it so much. So once again, we have this group of kids that are best friends, ride or die, have this great bond, and then something happens. So they decide to pull off this prank, this awesome prank. I love the prank. It was a really good idea. That was a good idea that they had. It just didn't go so well. So there's this mannequin that they love carrying around with them all throughout the summer. And they, as a joke to one of their friends who works at the movie theater, they have taken the mannequin apart and snuck it piece by piece into the movie theater and then reassembled it in one of the theater seats. They each wore an extra piece of clothing and took off their designated pieces of extra clothing to clothe the mannequin so that it's just another person in the theater. And then they caused a disruption so that the manager would come and check everybody's tickets, and then it was going to be like this thing where the manager is like surprised to see the mannequin and it causes a scene and it's a thing and but what happened instead was the scene didn't happen because the mannequin seemed like the mannequin gave the manager a ticket. That doesn't make sense. Mannequin is mannequin. But then the mannequin gets up and walks away, maybe? At least that's what our main character is pretty sure he saw happen. But what? And then it starts following them and picking them off. The mannequin starts picking them off. I love And Then There Were None plot lines. I love hauntings. I love like small town close friendship group, something is happening and they all have to band together, which this book is not the last part of what I said. And then I love And Then There Were None. There's so many. I'm having such a good reading day. But anyway, I don't want to give anything away. I think it might actually be on the back description. It is. It's on the back description what comes next, but I think that that's very unfair to the reader to say so much because I didn't read the back description. I just knew that I liked the last novella that I read by Stephen Graham Jones. I think it made it onto my favorite books of the year last year. It was fantastic. It was very Pet Sematary-esque. And I'll put it on the screen. I can't remember what it's called. And so I just knew, oh, cool. Like a spooky mannequin creature thing. Yeah, give me that. And I didn't expect it to take this turn. I did not expect it to do what it did next with the main character. Again, it's on the back description, so I would recommend just not reading the back description if what I've said so far interests you, because I would love for you to just experience it like I got to. This novella has a pretty low rating on Goodreads, and I haven't finished it yet, but I think that's unfair. Anyway, I'm gonna go get ready for bed because I don't know how much later I'm gonna stay up, but I'm loving this. So I'll see you in the morning. Good morning. So I finished Night of the Mannequins and I really, really enjoyed this. I don't want to tell you very much more than what I already told you in the last clip, just because it's so short and I feel like I've given you all the groundwork, all the setting information that you need, and then let the rest be. But I will say that there is a big emphasis on the fear of being a teen whose life is going to eventually have to change drastically as you and your core friend group grow up, as well as of being left behind. I loved this little novella so much. I read it with my friend Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, and we very early on in the book we were speculating on what was going on with the deeper, kind of what's behind it all. And it was really, really fun because this isn't a book that will just outright say what's going on. It won't outright say, and here's the answer to all the things. It'll kind of leave it for you to speculate, but it'll give you enough clues that you can come to a satisfying conclusion. And so it was so fun when we early on started speculating, and then as we were going, we would pick up on those little lines, little things that were being said that would reinforce what we were trying to piece together. And it's written in a way that is in the voice of Sawyer, our 17-ish-year-old kid. He's telling a story to us, so it's written in his voice to include rambling on and spiraling thoughts, and it's not written in beautiful prose. It's written in a voice of a kid who is going through some things, like this whole mannequins trying to pick us all off kind of things. But there is more to it than just there's a mannequin trying to pick us off. There's layers underneath that. I underlined something on almost every page of this tiny little novella because there were so many little clues and little hints and little things that we were like, let's read way too far into that. And then I thought it all came together in such a satisfying way where, again, it doesn't outright say, and here's what was going on the whole time, but it tells us enough that we can come to our conclusion. I don't know. I feel like this isn't probably a very popular book. This isn't a book that has super high ratings. This isn't a book that I think very many people are probably interested in, but I might just go ahead and do a spoiler review for it anyway. I'm definitely doing a spoiler review on the review channel, which is always linked in the description. There's only one of those. Also on the review channel, I do weekly reading vlogs, keeping you up to date on what I'm reading every single week. So if you like this video, you should check out that channel. It's full of awesome stuff like this. Anyway, I'm definitely doing a spoiler review for Something Wicked This Way Comes. And I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do one for this too, because I just really liked it. Probably no one will watch it, but I will. Anyway, I don't want to say anything else about it because it's so short, so I'll just say I really, really enjoyed myself with this. I need to read more Stephen Graham Jones. Next up is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and I know I can hear you complaining at me that why would I pick up this Stephen King book when I've only read 10 King books? And there's so many more popular ones for me to still read, but I lost a bet, and the deal was that the winner of the bet gets to pick my next book, so he picked his favorite King book. So I started it this morning with my coffee. I am 79 pages into it, bottom of the 4th. So we follow a young girl. She's 9, tall for her age, and her parents are going through a divorce. It's messy, it's yucky. She's on a hike with her mom and her older brother, and they're bickering back and forth about the divorce and about how messy things are getting. So she feels ignored, she feels invisible, and she ends up going off into the woods unnoticed by them to relieve herself, and ends up going deeper and deeper into the woods and gets lost. And at least this first chunk of the book has been about survival. She only has so much food with her. She only has so much water with her. She doesn't know how to survive in the woods. She has some tips that her mom has taught her because her mom's a hiker, and other than that, she doesn't know how to survive. She's gonna have to spend the night out here possibly because she's so lost, and she doesn't know if a search party is gonna be able to quickly find her. So she's dealing with landscape, she's dealing with insects, she's dealing with rationing her food. So far there haven't been any supernatural elements introduced, or if they're, or a slasher. I guess this could be a slasher book. There could be just like a killer in the woods. She is very in her head though, and trying to figure out how what she's gonna do, and if she is gonna make it through this. She's trying to find a stream right now, a water source that could potentially lead her to people. But she also has a Walkman, which is her companion in this book. She is a huge baseball fan and a huge fan of Tom Gordon, and so as she's walking through the woods, she'll put her earbuds in and listen to a baseball game, and we get commentary of the game as well. Now, I'm not a sports nerd and definitely not a baseball nerd, so all of this is going over my head, but I can relate in the way that if you're scared and you're isolated and you're too in your head, having something that's like a comfort blanket to go back to. Like if I were lost in the woods and I had a book in my backpack, I would almost certainly at some point when I needed to rest, pull out the book and just try to read, just for the sake of feeling some sort of comfort. So I can at least relate to that. I can at least understand why this is her comfort. And she's really attaching herself to Tom Gordon, who again, she's a big fan of, in the sense that she kind of feels like, if you can get through this game, if you can come out on top of this game, then I'm going to be able to be able to get through what I'm going through, and I'm going to come out on top as well. So she's really tying his success to her survival, which is pretty interesting. So far, I can't say that I'm gripped by this book, but King does write characters well, and he writes kids well. So, I'm not mad about it. Anyway, I'll check in with you when I'm done with it. I finished The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and that is the final book of the vlog. I didn't love it, but I do appreciate it. So King really likes digging into human fears, just like your average human terror, and then adding horror elements or suspense elements to just to amplify the very human fear that is really what's on display for the book. So The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is very focused on that childhood fear of, you're in the care of your parents, you're holding their hand, you're walking down the trail with them, and then all of a sudden you're not. Your safety is stripped from you, and you go from being secure to screaming alone in the woods, I want my mommy. I'm probably projecting, but there's also a little bit of a nod to the terrible fear of being a parent and suddenly looking behind you and your kid's not there, and your entire world comes crashing in, and there's nothing in the world that could strike fear into a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a family member who loves a child, and then suddenly they're not there, and your only thought is, will I ever see them again? Like, there is no fear like that fear. But this is focused on the childhood fear. I'm just a parent, so I'm thinking about the parent's perspective. But this is very, very focused on this little 9-year-old girl that is at first irritated and frustrated and not thinking fully through her situation, and then in survival, and then from a physical survival to a mental survival, and it turns very much into a psychological suspense where she's figuring out any resource that she can any resource that she can grab onto to keep her going and to keep her moving and to keep her hope alive. It's a small setting, it's one little girl in a forest with her imaginings to keep her alive. And there are some supernatural elements that are introduced in the book, but they are not the point or the focus of the book. The focus is more on her courage and her strength and her psychological battle and will to survive. And Trisha is so strong. She is such a strong, brave little girl that suffers so much, and you see so much vulnerability from her in this book. So all this to say, I respect the book and I understand why people would love it. It just didn't do a lot for me. After saying all that, that sounds so cruel, but you know, I was never bored reading it. I was fine to see it through, but I came through at the other end saying, I admire Trisha and I admire what the book did, but it's not really gonna stick with me too much. So this book brings the vlog back down to earth a little bit because it started off really just with a lot of really surprisingly great stories for me, stories that happen to connect for me perfectly. Night of the Mannequins is a book that, again, doesn't have a great rating on Goodreads, and yet I loved it. And this is one that I appreciate, and anyone that were to tell me, hey, I love this book, I would say, yep, that makes sense. It's a really emotional book, or rather, it's a book that draws on a lot of very human emotions. It's just, I don't know. I'm soulless. So, you probably already know, just based off of my reactions, but the way I will rank these 3 books that I read during this vlog is Something Wicked Comes This Way. Best book of the vlog. Oh, it was so good. Then we have Night of the Mannequins, also so good. 2 books that really took me by surprise. They were both a risk to me, where I was like, could be good, could be bad. Both were a success. And then finally, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, one that I respect the game, but it just wasn't my book. So those are the 3 books that I read in my 24 hours of horror with an asterisk. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely did. I came out with some really good books. I hope you're enjoying what you're reading, and if you've read any of these and you want to talk to me about them more in the comments, please do. And if you plan to read any of them, let me know which one you want to read and why. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the review channel, which is always linked in the description. I'll see you again soon. Bye.